I hope everyone can hear me. Jacqui, you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Okay, so welcome everybody to this first chat with an expert with Jacqui Mayes. We're going to go ahead and have a chat, and I'm going to ask Jacqui some questions, and she's going to keep us all informed on how we can help ourselves at home with our health, our nutritional health. So Jacqui, did you want to introduce yourself to us before we kind of kick off?
I can do. Hi everyone. So I'm Jacqui Mayes, as Julia has just said, and I'm a registered nutritional therapist, and I work at Oak Park Clinic in Crondall. So I'm local to here. I live in Bentley, and then I also work at the London Clinic of Nutrition. That's where I spend most of my time at the moment. But actually, with lockdown, everything's on Zoom, so I'm still seeing lots of people, and I have been a nutritional therapist for 11 years now. So, and I'm really passionate about it. It's something that I care so much about, because actually what we can make such a difference to so many areas of our lives. But I know Juliet's going to ask me loads of questions, so I won't just launch into that.
Okay. So I'm excited to hear about all of this, and maybe I can go on and eat something better for dinner than the pizza I've just had. So it was homemade pizza, it was okay. So first of all, can you just tell us why it's so important for us to eat the right foods, or the right nutrition, and in particular in this current situation that we're in, for our mind, for our bodies? Why is it so important?
Well, it's a bit like, if, to give you a really bad analogy, if you were putting the wrong petrol in your car wouldn't be working as well as it could be. So for instance, if you put diesel in a petrol car, it wouldn't work fabulously. And actually it's the same with our body, because what we put into our mouths actually goes to fuel literally everything. So it gives us energy, it helps our brains think, it regulates our mood, it regulates our skin, it regulates our hormones. Literally everything that we eat is what fuels us, and that's why it's so important.
And that's your brain as well, I guess.
Yeah, totally. You know, I mean, the things you eat actually give you the substrates to make neurotransmitters, you know, and those neurotransmitters are kind of dictate whether we're happy or sad or have motivation, or, you know, those kind of things, concentration, all of that, sleep well, all of those things are fueled by what we eat.
And so along those lines, the right foods, I'm guessing, fuel us well. Mm-hmm. And our car doesn't break down, our car runs efficiently.
Pretty much.
If we were to eat the right foods, so we eat all the right foods, but then we eat some of the wrong foods as well, do the wrong foods then have a detrimental effect, or are they okay if we've eaten the right foods?
Yeah, because it's about balance, really. So, you know, a good rule of thumb for a lot of people is to eat the right foods 85% of the time, and have some treats 10 or 15% of the time. And actually that means you're in balance. That means your body's getting the fuel it needs, but you're also getting to have some of the additional treats. The problem happens is that, you know, we've gone from, for instance, I remember when I was a kid, we used to have sweets at the weekend, and we were allowed a sweet on a Saturday or a Sunday. Now, like, sugar sweets are just around all the time. And actually, when you look at kind of typical Western diets, the balance is really skewed. There's not the 80%, 10, 20%. It's more like 80%, 10% the other way around, just because, you know, we live in such a convenience-filled world, and the convenience foods, there are some really good ones around, but there's also a lot that are just filled with processed carbs and sugars and not a lot of nutrients.
Yeah, I've really noticed this in my work as well, that it's there's such a wide range of foods available, and available so easily, that it's become like a hobby.
Yeah.
And you saying the car analogy, actually, funnily enough, I use exactly the same in my work, and explaining to people how food isn't a hobby, and sometimes it does seem to be the case that we forget why, you know, we forget that food is, it should just be a fuel.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what it
nothing
is,
else.
you know. But we use food for so many other things. We use food as reward, we use food as comfort, you know. And actually I think the kind of not the boundaries, but yeah, kind of the boundaries have got skewed in where the line comes, because, you know, lots of people, especially at the moment when, you know, you're stuck at home, you're probably a bit bored because you're either on the computer the whole time, or, you know, you're trying to do things. Food becomes, as you say, a hobby. It gives you something to do. And actually, from a health point of view, that's really not a great thing, particularly at the moment. You know, when you look at the COVID comorbidities, there's an awful lot of lifestyle diseases in there. So things like type 2 diabetes, things like cardiovascular disease, those are the things that we're finding are causing COVID severity of symptoms, really. I mean, there was a really interesting study done in Holland, like right up front, kind of early time, which was about how they think that the COVID virus is actually using fat in the body to penetrate the lungs and things like that.
Wow.
So, you know, that is why they were talking about, you know, actually being healthy, being of a good weight, all of those kind of things. So it's a difficult one because it's a bit of a vicious cycle because of the lockdown. So many people are, you know, finding it hard, using food as comfort, but yet that's the very thing that we need not to be doing to protect ourselves from this virus.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So we need to eat well.
We need to eat well.
What are you able to tell us in, I guess, the most easy to remember and simplistic way what we actually need and how we can do that without just needing to spend loads of money?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, okay, so guidelines: eat natural, eat as unprocessed and unpackaged as you possibly can, eat colourful, get as many kind of colourful fruits and vegetables in as you can. Each one of those colours provides so many health benefits, and vegetables and fruits are packed with the nutrients that we need. Okay, so for, you know, if we're going to think immunity, we're going to think vitamin C, top of the list. That's going to be colourful fruits and vegetables. If staying hydrated is really important, you know, actually, if I took a cross section of people and said, do you actually even drink the government guidelines of water a day? Very few people do. So the government guidelines are, for women it's 1.5 litres, and for men it's 2 litres, and that's kind of normal people, not people who go to the gym or those kind of things. And hydration is really important because actually all of your immune complexes have to get around the body to do their job. And if you're dehydrated, they're not going to be getting there as quickly. I'd say almost higher than any of that, cut out the sugar or avoid as much sugar as you can, because there have been some really interesting studies looking at how sugar actually down regulates your immune system. So there's been a study that says for if you have a sugary snack, your lymphocytes and white blood cells are not produced as well for 5 hours afterwards.
Goodness.
So that's a big one, really, you know. And then when it comes to things like carbohydrates, try and go whole grains, just because actually the whole grains, the grain itself, most of the nutrients are in the outer husk. So from a mental health point of view, B vitamins are so important for supporting our brain. And there's been amazing studies looking at, you know, incidence of people with low B vitamins having much higher incidence of depression and anxiety. So just making a simple switch, you know, if you're having bread, go for brown bread rather than white bread, because it's going to have so much more B vitamins and zinc, which we actually need for mental health, to support our mental health, but also to support our immunity. And then how do we do it cheaply? Well, actually we're very lucky in Farnham because we've got lots of decent supermarkets that have really good fruit and veg aisles. And, you know, I mean, I have no financial gain here at all, but actually I can go to Lidl or Aldi and get bags and bags of fresh vegetables and decent food for really not very much money. So I think that there is this perception that eating healthily is expensive. And I think that's been perpetuated because actually eating poorly is really cheap. You know, but actually,
yeah.
You know, I mean, to give you an idea, I'm a bit of a supermarket snoop. So I was standing in the checkout the other day and there was a lady in front of me and she had a big basket, a big trolley full of food for her family. But there was not a single colour in there at all. Literally, it was all beige. There were no fruit, no vegetables. And I had a small trolley which had, you know, quite a lot of kind of more nutritious food. But her big basket came to the same as my smaller basket, you know. But from a health point of view, actually there was no comparison whatsoever. And I have to say I wasn't shopping in Aldi at the time, because if I had been shopping at Aldi at the time, our baskets would have cost the same, you know. So it's about balancing things. And for instance, you know, you can eat really, really well for little money if you don't eat too much meat or eat, you know, those expensive things. I would rather eat less meat and good quality meat than I would eat cheap meat every day.
Yeah, I think that seems to be the way it's going, isn't it? We've actually found a great farm to buy our meat from. Like you, no financial gain from it, but it's Piper's Farm and they're online, and the meat's great and it's all you know, everything good about it. But it's expensive.
Are they local, Juliet?
No, that's the one thing that's not good, I suppose.
Yeah.
No, they're not. Mill Farm is where I'd go if I were going local.
Yeah.
They're not. They are expensive, but the quality of the meat is that much greater that you actually get so much more meat. So it lasts so much longer. You know, we can buy a chicken for our family of 4, and we'll cook the chicken and cut it in half and have one half with a roast dinner and freeze the other half for the next week's roast dinner. And we're not scrimping. We've got enough meat. There's sometimes some left over for the next day.
Absolutely. But
funnily enough, we're on their mailing list, you know, and they actually sent an email giving tips for packing your meat out and saying you know, eat, like you say, less but better quality. So
and that's not just better for our health, but it's better for the environment as well, you know. And that's something we do have to think about, because food needs to be sustainable for us to stay well and have enough food on our plates.
Yeah, so actually that's reminded me of something I've been thinking today that I wanted to ask you. I'm going to ask you 2 questions, excuse me, in one, because I've got 2 on my mind and I'll forget them. The first one, you said eat the rainbow of colours. Is it right that that the reason you do that is because there's different nutrients in the different colours? So if you eat the range of colours, you get all the variety of nutrients that you need.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other thing, now I can't remember why I wanted to ask this question, but it's about the supplements. We're going to talk about supplements later. And someone once said to me quite a long time ago now that the reason we need supplements, and you'll have to correct her if it's wrong, but because way back many years ago, we would have eaten perhaps a plum and it would have given us a huge amount of nutrients, but now these things are so mass produced that you need kind of a handful to get the same amount as you would have done back then. Is that, you know, you're going to mention supplements and nutrients and vitamins,
so even sometimes not even a handful will help you. I mean, the thing is, to answer the first question, eating a rainbow is important for various reasons. the main reason is its antioxidant component. So each color has a different kind of antioxidant, but also each color has different phytonutrients, and phytonutrients are plant-based nutrients that exert all sorts of health benefits to us. You know, I mean, for all sorts of reasons, whether it's heart health or whether it's immunity or, you know, all of those kind of things. Actually, even things like phytonutrients for balancing female hormones, you know, phytoestrogens are brilliant things that actually can balance female hormones. If your estrogen levels are too low, they can boost them. If your estrogen levels are too high, they can block them. So just things like that are so fascinating. Wow. And so helpful to us. But the second question about, you know, can we really get everything we need from our food rather than supplements is a difficult one, because again, it depends how your food is produced. Right. So if we were having this conversation even 50 years ago, which is not that long ago, our soils were much less over-farmed. Our food came to our plates a lot quicker than they do now. We didn't tend to get food picked when it was not ripe and flown to the UK where it ripens. You know, all of those kind of things actually lower the nutrient content of the food we eat, not to mention the fact that very often food sits on our supermarket shelves for days. You know, it's not like I'm going out to my garden and I'm going to pick that carrot, which will have 50, 100 times more nutrients than something that's been picked and flown and sat on supermarket shelves and all of those kind of things. So, you know, when people say to me, do I have to take supplements? I say it depends on how you're feeling. You know, if you're feeling well and you're eating a good diet, then no. But actually, if you're having symptoms, and those symptoms don't necessarily have to be digestive symptoms, they could be low energy or low mood or anxiety or any of those kind of things, then actually taking supplements can make sure that you're getting the right amount of nutrients, particularly at the moment when, you know, we're, you know, there's so much viruses around and all of those kind of things.
Yeah. And so on nutrient supplements, are they supplements and vitamins, are they personal? Are they person specific? Would you talk to somebody about their symptoms and then you test them, or is there anything people should just take?
Okay, so I work in something called a functional medicine way, and that is a kind of a way of looking at symptoms and looking at the underlying cause for them. So we don't just treat the symptom. You know, you don't come to me saying, I've got PMS or I've got eczema or I've got digestive symptoms, and I go, okay, here's a pill to stop those symptoms. I'm actually looking at the underlying cause, and the underlying cause for every single person I see is very different. So the way I work is very personalized and very individual, and depending on what that person tells me about their health history and their current lifestyle and their diet, I will devise a specific protocol for them. From a general population point of view, I would say at the moment, a good multivitamin is not a bad idea. You know, it's winter, we don't have that much fresh veg around at the moment. Public Health England have said that everybody over the age of 1 should supplement with vitamin D. And, you know, we live in the Northern Hemisphere. We don't run around in our bikinis all day, so we're not getting exposed to lovely sunshine, which we convert into vitamin D. And again, from a COVID point of view, there are so many studies coming out saying that, you know, the people who are the most ill have very low vitamin D levels. So it's really important that we keep our vitamin D levels up during the winter. I'm not sure if Public Health England have actually changed their amounts. They were suggesting 400 IUs, which is about 10 micrograms of vitamin D. I think that's a little bit inadequate at the moment, I would say. And a lot of people are talking about kind of, I've had my clients today were saying that their doctors are actually saying they should be taking 3,000 or 4,000
Wow.
IUs at the moment. So somewhere in the middle of that is probably a reasonable place. But while we're talking about supplements, I should just say that not all supplements are created equal. So to give you an example, vitamin D is a fat soluble vitamin. It's actually better absorbed by the body if it's in a fat carrier. So if you are buying a vitamin D supplement, go for one that's in an oil, either an oil capsule or oil drops, just because the body actually can absorb it better and use it better. And then things like calcium, you know, a lot of the, shall I say, cheaper or supermarket supplements use calcium carbonate. Well, calcium carbonate is effectively chalk and it's not absorbed very easily. So, you know, I think what I'm trying to say is, you know, you get more bang for your buck if you actually use decent supplements with decent supplement companies rather than kind of going for your supermarket ones. And they're not actually that much more expensive, but they actually do what they're supposed to do. Your body can absorb the ingredients rather than not absorb the ingredients.
So for the layperson, what
Yep.
would you consider a reputable brand if we were to go and buy our vitamin D as soon as we get off the
so actually vitamin D is fine, because any vitamin D, as long as it's in an oil carrier, is fine. And the same with vitamin C, actually. You know, the majority of vitamin Cs on the market are absolutely fine, really. They're normally ascorbic acid. I'm just looking at my big pot here. They're normally absolutely fine. If you want to really kind of make sure that you're absorbing it, then a liposomal vitamin C is quite good. But to be honest, any kind of vitamin C at the moment is good.
Okay.
And then, you know, if you're wanting to look for good brands for multivitamins, you know, easily available brands like BioCare or Solgar or NutriAdvanced or Lambert's is a good one that's not too much money. You know, there are really good ones. Actually, I would say if you went into a good health food shop, they'd be able to advise you very easily of, and you know, we've got the lovely one down Downing Street. Yeah. I hope it's still there.
Farnham Whole Food.
That's right. They've got some, you know, they've got Cytoplan in there. Cytoplan's nice because it's food based. So again, the body absorbs it easier. So, but they've anything in there, and they're lovely in there, and they're knowledgeable too, so they can help. But as a kind of general, that's a good one. If you're having symptoms, it's probably worth talking to somebody and who can put a protocol together for you.
Great. And so at the moment, there's so many people just feeling that kind of cabin feverish, tired, lacking in motivation type feeling. Yeah. What can we do at home ourselves with the food we eat to try and perk ourselves up, give us a bit of energy and motivate us to do something while we're kind of not able to do anything?
Yeah. Okay. So food wise, B vitamins are brilliant, because B vitamins are needed to turn the energy in your food into energy. So you find B vitamins in things like dark green leafy vegetables, in whole grains. Nuts and seeds are really good sources of B vitamins. Obviously not if you've got a nut allergy, I have to say. Things like beans and lentils, and then animal sources are things like chicken, pork, fish, eggs, those kind of things. So, you know, making sure your diet is rich in those. And actually, interestingly, most of those foods also have things like zinc and magnesium, which are also needed for energy and mental health and immunity is what I'm trying to say. So those are all good things. One thing I just want to say about the B vitamins, if you are vegan, I know loads of people are doing veganuary this year. There are no good sources of vitamin B12 that are not animal based. So if you are somebody who's doing veganuary and you are feeling depressed or have very little energy, get your B12 levels checked or supplement.
Sorry, did you say that there's no foods that have high B12?
There are no plant-based foods.
Plant-based foods, yeah.
So if you're doing veganuary and you're not having any animal produce, as in meat or fish or eggs, your B12 intake is going to be much lower. And B12 is really needed for energy and good mood and all of those kind of things.
But there'll be vegan supplements that you can take to get your B12
up. Or if you are I'm sure the GPs wouldn't be that interested for somebody who's just doing veganuary, but if you're a long-term vegan, it's definitely worth talking to your GP and getting your levels checked, because they can actually give you B12 injections.
Oh right, and the GP will do that, so that's not something people would need to necessarily pay out their money to see a nutritional therapist.
Exactly. I mean, having said that, I know that the NHS is pretty overwhelmed at the moment, and it may not be something that your GP is particularly able or willing to talk about at the moment, but certainly in normal times, GPs definitely do B12, and they should also be able to test your vitamin D.
Yes. Yeah.
So both of those, from a motivation, energy, both of those are really important.
Yeah. And so are there any kind of dinners? So if people are feeling depressed, anxious, just down, not in a good mood, negative mood, if you like, negative mental health, what kind of things would you be recommending that they cook for themselves? Breakfast, lunches, dinners? What would be a good plan?
Absolutely. So I would say make sure you've got enough protein in each of your meals and snacks. So, for instance, if we're thinking about breakfast, having a cereal-based breakfast is pure carbohydrate, and most of the cereal-based breakfasts tend to be refined carbohydrates, so they also have lost most of their nutrients from the outer husks. So I would think, if you are somebody who eats animal produce, then eggs are brilliant for breakfast. Not only are they full of protein, but they've also got something called choline in them, and choline is needed for neurotransmitter production. If you're not somebody who eats animal produce, then something like a coconut milk yogurt with some granola that is made without sugar and without dried fruit in it, but it's got lots of nuts and seeds and grains, whole grains in it, is a really good start to the day. Both of those are good. From a cheap point of view, a really nice bowl of porridge with a handful of nuts and seeds and a little bit of even frozen berries is great. From a cheapness point of view, because obviously fresh berries at the moment are quite expensive being winter because they're having to be flown in. Frozen berries are just as good and often full of nutrients because they're frozen almost as quickly as they're picked. So that's a great breakfast. I would say kind of both lunch and evening meals, what you want to be doing is you want to increase your plant intake because they've got all the nutrients that you need for your brain to function properly, and make sure you've got enough protein. Protein is the thing that is broken down into amino acids, which make up the substrates of literally every single function that your body does. And because we in the West have kind of got into this thing where we do most of our protein in the evening, we'll have cereal or toast for breakfast, which is all carb, and then we'll have a sandwich or a baked potato for lunch, which is pretty much all carb, and then we'll do our meat, our fish, our beans and lentils in the evening. But that's asking the body to actually run all day long without the building blocks it needs to do its functions. You know, so having a little bit of protein with each of your meals and snacks is really important. And also, just to say on the protein side of things, if you eat your protein with your carbohydrate, because the protein molecule is harder to break down, it actually slows the release of sugar from the carbohydrate side of the meal. So you don't get great big blood sugar spikes and then blood sugar drops, and it keeps you full for longer. So you get a much more stable energy production from that kind of meal.
And are there some nuts that are better than others, or?
No, all nuts have different properties. Again, we have to be careful, because if you've got a nut allergy, don't go there. Sorry, I speak to lawyers all the time and I have to kind of put all of these things in. Nuts are great sources of essential fats, but they're also great sources of minerals as well, and B vitamins. So, you know, as a snack, a handful of nuts and a piece of fruit is about as good as it gets, because you've got essential fats, you've got protein, you've got lots of nutrients coming in, you've got some carbohydrate from the fruit, but it's actually slow releasing carbohydrate, you've got fiber to be feeding your gut bacteria, which keep us healthy. You know, that's like your perfect snack.
Yeah, okay. And what about fruit? So I think we're going to have a little talk. You're going to talk to us a little bit about sugar, and whether sugar is really as bad as it is. But before we do, leading into that, you've talked a bit about fruit and vegetables, and so, you know, there's the whole 5 a day thing. Am I right in thinking that it should be more like maybe 5 pieces of fruit a week and everything else made up with vegetables? Or
you can think like that. I mean, the 5 a day thing should definitely be more veg than fruit. As you say, because of the sugar content, but also because vegetables tend to have more of the vitamins and minerals than fruit do. Right. So from a health point of view, they're a better option, and they also have a load of fiber in them to feed the good gut bacteria and keep us regular. Sorry to go there, but I'm a nutritional therapist.
Important.
Exactly. The 5 a day is an interesting one, because we are the only country in Europe that says 5 a day. Everywhere else says 8 to 10 a day. And we are, you know, if you look at the cross section of the population, very few of us actually hit that 5 a day. Now, from a health point of view, that is an issue, because there is more and more and more and more research coming out that the gut bacteria and the balance of gut bacteria is so important to our health, but also our mental health. You know, like there's lots and lots of research looking at gut bacterial balance and depression, anxiety, kids with autistic spectrum disorders, all very much centered on gut bacterial balance. And we have to remember that the beneficial bacteria love the fibers that vegetables and fruits give them, and the opportunistic bacteria love the sugar that sugar and refined carbohydrates give them. So if we are eating a typical kind of UK Western diet, which doesn't have that much veg and has a lot of refined carbohydrates, we're fueling those opportunistic bacteria. And from a mental health point of view, that's driving that depression and anxiety.
Right.
And the other thing about that is we're all creatures of habit. So, you know, I love my broccoli and I love my carrots and I love my celery. But that means that those gut bacteria are only getting those fibers. And there's lots of research looking at the fact that the more diverse a range of vegetables you eat, the more diverse a range of beneficial bacteria you have, because there's, you know, hundreds of different strains. So the different varieties you can have, the better your gut bacterial balance and diversity is going to be.
Really interesting. And so we're coming to the end. We've got about 4 minutes left. But tell us about sugar.
Sugar. Okay.
Really, you have touched on it already. and you didn't speak particularly highly of it. Tell us, there's obviously we've gone through kind of years of salt being the worst thing in the world, and now we're at sugar's terrible.
Yeah.
I listen to quite a lot about nutrition, and I'm under the impression that it's really, really not benefiting us. What's your take on that?
So the first thing I've got to say is that biologically or physiologically, we have absolutely no need or requirement for refined sugars. We just don't. People always say, but I need carbohydrate, but actually vegetables and fruit are carbohydrate, and they're giving you the glucose that you need. So sugar is a highly addictive, refined product, for want of a better word. It is also one of the most inflammatory molecules that we can eat. So if there's anyone, when we think about kind of inflammation, we think about arthritis, we think about heart disease, we think about diabetes, we think about all of those kind of lifestyle conditions that are so prevalent nowadays that weren't prevalent 50 years ago when we didn't eat the amount of sugar that we eat now. Now, I'm not saying you must never let a piece of sugar touch your lips ever again. But the problem is we eat so much of it. And I'm not just talking about sugar. If you think that white bread, if you take a stick of French, I'll try that again, a French stick, and you cut it open and you take the lovely fluffy stuff in the middle and you hold it in your mouth, just the enzymes in your saliva will turn that to glucose. So all of that kind of white refined breads, rice, pasta, sugar, sweets, all of those things that we all eat on a daily basis, that's all carbohydrate, that's all converted to glucose, and that drives inflammation. It feeds the opportunistic bacteria. So I don't even mean moderation, but as little sugar as we possibly can is definitely a good thing.
Yeah, actually, I was listening to a podcast this morning. Dr. Mark Hyman, I think.
Lovely.
And you've just he says the same, and you saying about the inflammatory diseases, and I just wanted to add in as well that depression and Alzheimer's also inflammatory diseases of the brain.
Absolutely, inflammation of the brain. That's so true.
So it's that, I think that kind of rounds up our chat quite nicely. Actually, you started at the beginning talking about inflammation, and we've kind of finished back here, and how what we were saying at the beginning were the wrong foods don't just affect our body. For so many years people just thought the problem with eating the wrong food was that you get fat
and you get bad teeth.
Well, you get bad teeth, but nowadays actually there's so much more to the wrong food. It's not about being overweight. I mean, it is, because that's unhealthy, and especially with COVID, that's one of the problems. But it's actually I think probably for you, Jacqui, and for me, the wrong food is more about the effect on the body, mental health, and I know you've worked quite a lot with fibromyalgia and things like that, and that's what wrong food is really. It's not about and actually, looking bad.
But that's why I became a nutritional therapist, because I have fibromyalgia, and 20 years ago I wasn't getting out of bed and I wasn't walking downstairs, and it was a nutritional therapist that changed that for me, because actually I was living on baked potatoes and Diet Coke. And actually I was a very, very sick person, and just changing my diet made the difference. I was talking to a client today who's got rheumatoid arthritis. She hasn't had a flare for the last 4 months since changing her diet.
Amazing. That's brilliant. Yeah, really good. Okay, well, we're at 7:40. Very punctual.
Brilliant.
So yeah, we'll finish off there, and I'm going to add this onto YouTube. So if the people here watching now want to rewatch it, then it'll be on there. I'll put a link up on the Facebook page, and I hope that anyone else who gets to watch it on YouTube enjoys it as much as I have, and we have. I'm going to speak for everyone and say we have. But it was really good to speak to you, Jacqui.
Really lovely to speak to you. Thank you.
I enjoyed it, and yeah, I'm gonna say bye to everybody. Oh, there's just a pop up from Laura who's on to say thank you. So
my pleasure, Laura.
Okay.
And Rachel.
Thank you. I'm gonna end with all now. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.